Hey everyone, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. Mr. Chris Sorensen, who's the CEO of a company called PhoneBurner, and I are going to discuss today how you can sell more using the phone. And, if you're not using the phone today, I'm going to talk about why you should use the phone. Because, with the advent of AI and all of the things going on, we're going to talk a bit about that on our conversation. Why human touch is still, it reigns supreme. And if you're not having phone calls and you're not talking to people, you're missing out on sales. It's that simple. So, super great interview with this gentleman. Very smart. We're going to get into not only that as how to sell more on the phone, but also the kind of the psychology and the philosophy behind how you should approach that and approach your day in, day out, whether you're a CEO of a company who owns, a sales team, or whether you're a sales professional or a solo entrepreneur. This episode is going to be really great for you. So let's go talk to Chris right now. Hey, Chris, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. Thanks so much for being here today.
Doug, great to be here. Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's always nice to talk with you. Well, why don't you tell everybody what you do, who you are, the company you're building, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, so Doug, as you know, I'm with PhoneBurner. PhoneBurner, we're about 20 years old. A lot of people think we invented the phone because we've been around so long, but we didn't invent the phone. What we're really trying to do, Doug, is save the phone call for salespeople. People need to be able to make phone calls to reach their prospects and their customers, and we see ourselves playing a crucial role in helping people save those calls so that they get answered and they're able to connect and have meaningful conversations.
So, I want to dig into this a little bit because I have, I had 17 years worth of experience in the telecommunications business, right? From all kinds of companies. And, back in the old days, we'd get a list, when I first started out, it's like, okay, we're going to call upon these companies. And then I'd sit in my analog phone and I'd go, 1 plus area code plus NPA, NXX, and, dial the 7-digit number after the area code. And hopefully somebody answered, right? It was like, ring, ring, hello. Oh, nope. Or ring, ring, voicemail, ring, ring, busy, whatever, right? So what your company does now is, I think it just speeds that whole process up, right?
That's right.
So,
yeah.
And I was doing a little bit of reading on what you're doing, and people, those of you who listen, you usually don't hear me go into like product stuff, but this is important for you to know. So there's like power dialing.
Mm-hmm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, because I just did my research on this.
Sure.
Power dialing, where basically one number comes up after another. You make a phone call and it pulls the next number up and then the next number up, and you're doing like a one call thing pretty quickly. It's rapid calling. And then you've got power dialing, if I remember correctly, and you have predictive dialing, right?
We don't quite offer predictive dialing, but we do offer power dialing.
Okay.
So think about it this way. You have a list of people that you're really interested in reaching out to, and you want to move through that list quickly. What we do is we compress the time between calls. So in the old days, like you referred to, you would sit there and you'd key in the 10-digit phone number, 1, area code, prefix, all that good stuff. We make it so that process is eliminated, and we rapidly, sequentially help you go through and process that list. So we compress all the time in between phone calls, getting you in touch with people much faster.
Okay, so that's cool. So, I'm a rep, or I have reps, and we're calling upon clients. So what I'm hearing is we could have whatever number of lines in this machine, if you will, is dialing all these numbers for us. And then when one connects, I get connected with the person, so to speak, right?
Yeah, and we currently only allow you to have one line to go really quickly through. And the reason why we do one line as opposed to maybe 5, 10, or 15 different lines is that we feel it's so important those first few seconds when someone says hello, that a human's there to greet them. I think all of us have experienced the beep, or they call it the telemarketer delay, hello, and then you wait for 2 or 3 seconds to be connected.
Yeah.
We don't have any of that.
No. The call's over by then, right? I mean, if you're calling upon a CEO or
click.
Yeah. It's like, as soon as you hear the silence, Like
Yeah.
I had that happen to me 3 times. I counted them actually in the last 2 days,
Oh yeah.
where it was like the phone rang and I was like, oh, this is a familiar area code. So I picked it up and it was like silence. And then I'm like, okay, so this is a calling room. I can tell. And
Yep.
then so I'm waiting and I'm hearing the people in the background like blah, 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 and
Oh
then
yeah.
hello, does this Doug, that type of
Yeah.
thing. And I'm like, I already know they don't know me.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. So you're taking away that unknown feeling. And the moment it picks up, it's like, hi, hey Chris, this is Doug Brown, from ABC company, or CEO sales strategies in this case. And going right into the script
Going right
process
into it.
that they go into. Okay.
Yep. Going right into it.
That makes a lot of sense. So folks, those of you hearing this is super important when you're making calls like this. And the reason it's super important is, you've got to be able to build very quickly some level of trust and
That's right.
some level of familiarity, rapport, people call this, right? But it's certainly trust is the most important thing. And if you're hearing dead silence, it really creates this eerie feeling within us human beings, like it's an unknown. And we all love unknowns when they're happy, but when they're not happy, then we go, let's move away from that, right?
Yeah.
It's just the way we operate as human beings. So, and speaking of human beings, Chris, AI today, everybody's talking about AI, right? AI. It's like I think most people are afraid of it. Many are afraid of
Yeah.
it,
Absolutely.
but it is also we have the ability to actually shape outbound calls now using AI, right?
Yep.
And I've listened to some of these. Some of these are very good. Some of those are like, this, I'm going to date myself. Will Robinson. Danger, danger. The old Robart on the
Yeah.
folks. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. It's called
Mhm.
Lost in Space.
Yeah. That's right.
I showed my daughters this about a year ago, and they went, "This is so cool! I didn't know TV looked like this." And I'm like, "Gosh." um,
Definitely.
um, but using AI today, good idea, bad idea, but you still got to use human beings too, right? In this whole
You have
process.
to. Yeah, you absolutely have to. I mean, the human touch absolutely matters. And I think one of the things that humans are particularly good at is determining signal versus noise. And I think AI has the opportunity to introduce a lot of noise into conversations and to, prohibit in some cases relationships from genuinely building. And I think that especially in calling, AI can be really good at maybe doing some research to help you understand more about Doug prior to, engaging or calling him. But it certainly is not going to replace you as a person being able to connect with Doug and have a really meaningful conversation and start to build a relationship. Understand if maybe the problems he's got align with the solutions that you offer, making a genuine connection and moving forward. So I think, there's so much we could talk about as it relates to AI. What I'm seeing now is, half of the people that are out there selling are using it, and the other half are pretending that they are. They don't really understand maybe how to apply it or best use it. But I think that what is problematic in particular is when people lose sight of what sales is really all about. It's connecting two individuals, seeing if there's some alignment between what the need is and what the solution offers, and then really building a genuine relationship and opportunity around that.
It sounds so simple, Chris, right?
It
It's
sounds simple.
it's like, and here's the weird part about people selling, I think they make such a big deal out of this. Like, I didn't get my script right. I didn't get this. Oh, this person said this. I don't know what to say. Therefore, freeze, right? Our limbic
Yeah.
systems kick in.
Yeah.
And I love the definition of what you just said because I'm telling people the same thing repetitively. It's like two or more people are going to have a conversation. Sometimes it's one person. We're trying to sell ourselves,
Yeah.
right? In our own
Yeah.
head.
Absolutely.
And we've got a problem we want to solve or some goal we want to get. And maybe the problem is we don't have our goal. And now we're going to help that other individual if we can.
Yeah.
And folks, there's your problem. If you can't and you're still trying to, you're stuffing the sale in, and that's not a good sale. It's not win-win, right?
No.
Um, But if you can help that person. And if they're open and accepting of the help and they feel it's a good fit and you feel it's a good fit, hey, you get married basically, right? On a
Right.
sale. Why do people complicate this, in your opinion?
Follow the money, right? There's so many different solutions out there. There's so many different tactics and approaches, and it's at its core, it is really so simple, and it's just what you said. If you are really genuine about this, and you believe in what it is that you sell, and somebody's got a product that this offers a solution or some, painkiller for, I think what you have to do to be really good at being in sales is you have to be empathetic, being able to see the world from your prospect's point of view. And you got to be really curious and want to make sure that you can truly connect the dots and help people out. And it doesn't get much more complicated than that. I tell people all the time, when we're hiring salespeople or working with salespeople, if you're empathetic and you're genuinely curious, you can be really good at sales, like really good at sales. And those are the two qualities and traits that we look for in people that we bring on to help us put our solution in the hands of people that most need it.
Yeah, and I was just reading a book, and I can't remember the name of the book, uh, but I was reading a book, and it was in the book. It was oh, I'm sorry, it was about how to build trust within organizations, right?
Yep.
And and it came up with a formula. It said being caring, sincerity, being uh, relatable, reliable, and being able to show our expertise. Right? Those were like the 4 or 5 characteristics. If we can do that, then we're building trust. And the most important ones were showing that we care.
That's right.
Right. And demonstrating that we have competence or expertise. If we can do those two, the other 3 are still important, but they're not as important as the caring or the competence, so to speak.
Right.
And I remember years and years and years and years ago when I started selling music equipment, and we were selling music equipment. It was a really cool job. We were selling it to like all the great bands that were on radio at that time.
Yeah.
And there was one gentleman, Bob Catalano. Bob, if you ever listen to this, thank you. I watched him, and he was such an expert, Chris, in what he was able to sell, that when people were talking to him, Bob was like, "Yeah, and you could do this, in this, and or yeah, and well, but I wouldn't do it that way, and here's the reason why." And he was just like, he was a walking book of knowledge, and people
Yeah.
would buy from him, and I just watch him in awe. I was like, "How did he learn all this stuff?" And then he told me, he's like, "Doug, I sit down and I play with this stuff and I study it."
Yeah.
So I think one of the struggles you had mentioned, hey, if we get into earlier on our call, prior to this conversation, it's like if we find any struggles, let's dive deep into it. I think one of the struggles that people have is they don't know how to demonstrate trust, and they don't know how to deal with rejection. And those two are really super important in sales. And folks, if you're going to be calling out upon people, you're going to get rejected. I mean, you're not going to get rejected. The idea of what you are proposing is going to get rejected, but too many people, I believe, feel that it's personal rejection.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of like address that? Because I got to imagine that you're running across that in the business that you're in.
Oh yeah, sure. So I think, there's two parts here. One is how do you establish that initial trust, and then two, how do you deal with that rejection? I
Hmm.
think there's one thing before we even get into both of those that I just want to compliment you on, and I think that your listeners queuing in on it would be well served to kind of follow what the teacher's doing here. You're a lifelong learner. How many years you been doing this?
Oh, geez, I have been doing this now, believe it or not, 60 years.
60 years. And you
60
just
years.
talked about a book you read. Most people at the end of 6 decades of something are like, yeah,
Yeah.
subject matter expert. I don't need to know anymore. And you're still reading books on how to get better. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, because it's part of the process, right? It's like we don't we don't die till we die.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the way I
Yeah.
look at it. Right?
Stay relevant or become a relic, right? How
Yeah,
many
yeah,
I
yeah.
was
It's
just
better said. Yes, I agree. And you know, And I got to credit some of the mentors that I've actually had through
Yeah,
my life, for this. But they were always constantly reading. They were keeping their brains up and keeping up with the times.
that's right.
Tony Robbins calls it CANI, right? Constant and never-ending improvement. And
No, constant. Yeah,
yeah, so I just kind of embraced that through my life. Plus, I like it, right? And I get to help other people because I'm doing that, right?
that's right. That's right. Yeah. So I think one, it underpins everything. You got to continue to be a lifelong learner. You have to, and that I think because of what you pick up when you continue to learn, it helps you translate those things into a communication style or messaging that people can really see the genuineness of what you're trying to get across, and that genuine and trust I think go hand in hand. I mean, sure, you can be a good actor and you can fleece people, but I think that there's a genuineness that really comes across, and it, I know it, and I think your listeners also understand. You can sense it when you can trust somebody when you first start to engage with them, and so I think being a lifelong learner really helps because ultimately at the end of the day, if your aspiration and your motivation for what you're trying to do here is to really help people out, that's going to come across in the things that you say, the approach. And really, if you want to be trusted, become a good listener. And I don't know how many people forget that. They think they've got to have the perfect thing to say, but if you can be a perfect listener, you're going to be far on your way to being really well trusted. So that would be the most simple advice I can offer is if you want to be somebody that people can trust, be a really good listener. As it relates to rejection, uh, the reality is, look, if you're a baseball player, right, the World Series is going on right now. If you do something, a quarter of the time or better, you're considered elite.
Mm.
And I think in sales, it's similar. If you're batting 1,000, I think that we all need to pay attention to you. But if you're not, you either win or you learn. And for those opportunities that maybe uh, don't connect and they don't result in a sale, I think you got to ask yourself, what can I learn from this moment? And I think if you have, again, going back to lifelong learning, if you have that attitude that, hey, this didn't work out, but I am going to learn something from it, and I'm earnest in my pursuit and trying to figure out what it is that I need to learn, those rejections become much easier to take, and they absolutely I think are foretelling future success because you are learning from those moments where you maybe didn't have success defined as I got the sale. And so I think if you can turn rejection into a learning moment, it makes it more palatable, easier to digest. But if you look at rejection in a way that it is ending and final, you're going to have a pretty stormy forecast for that next call or that next at bat, so to speak, that you get in trying to sell or have a conversation with somebody.
So turning rejection into a learning moment is, you said something, and I want to repeat it. You either win or learn.
Yeah,
And that was like, I wrote this down, folks. If you didn't write that down, write that down. You either win or learn. And in rejection, you can learn not to love rejection. That's not the point. The
yeah,
point I'm trying to make is you can learn from the things that didn't go right. And then you can start to understand, and you get eventually you start to get wisdom around that, right? Going back to the lifetime learning
that's
thing,
right.
right? Um, sometimes I read in books now, or I'll watch documentaries because I love those things. What did Abe Lincoln do? What did
Yeah, sure.
what did whoever do?
Yeah.
Dr. Ruth, I just watched that one recently.
Oh yeah.
What a strong woman. Um,
Yeah.
and super intelligent. But you'll see, I see the parallels through time. There are similar principles, and people, who were selling back in 1802 or were getting rejected just as anybody now is getting rejected. But they're not rejecting us necessarily. They're rejecting the ideas. But I wanted to go to the win or learn thing. And because if we can do rejection and learn from that, then we get incrementally better every
That's right.
time we're learning. And as we're getting incrementally better, it's like going to the gym, when if anybody's ever tried this, the first time you go to the gym, it's like you go there and you like work out and you're like, okay, that wasn't too bad. And then the next day you're like, ow, my muscles hurt, right? It's like
Yeah.
It's not your body rejecting you to go work out, folks. It's your body is responding and giving you pain signals, right? So the difference between pain and struggling is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Pain is inevitable, so to speak. We all have pain. But if we continue to keep that psychological pain, like, oh my God, this happened. Oh my gosh, this happened. And I'm just rejecting, rejecting, rejecting. Now we're rejecting ourselves from being able to get to that place. Now we're in a struggle. And it's the struggle that feels the worst. That's what I have found.
Yeah.
Chris, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And, I think it's kind of interesting. The struggle feels really real if you don't feel confident. And the only way to feel confident is to prepare. And so I think that, it feels a lot better to be rejected when you're completely prepared because hey, I did everything possible to put myself into this moment. I still learned that, whatever it was wasn't right about it. And now I'm better for that next rep. I'm better for that next at bat. And so, we want to approach these jobs in sales because they are hard. I mean, unless you've done it, it is hard. The more that you can prepare yourself, the more confidence you're going to have. And people on the other end of the line can sense if you're confident, right? We talked about this earlier is if there's a degree of likability to your approach and there's subject matter expertise that really, I think, translates to that other person going, hey, this guy knows what I'm talking about and could probably really help me. If you're prepared, you're going to have that confidence and it's going to come across in the way that you speak.
And when you repeat that process over and over and over again, and you're learning and you learn a little more, folks,
That's right.
and then you learn a little more and you're like, oop, that didn't work. And then you learn like, oh, that did work. And then the 12 times you're doing it in a row, it's working. You're now gaining wisdom.
That's right.
And,
100%.
I, in my earlier part of my life, especially, I used to study martial arts and then I was always at awe. We had this in Aikido, we had this gal, she was teaching us, and I don't even think she was 5 feet tall.
Yeah.
But then this big 6'7", 350-pound guy would come to her and she'd just be like, whoop, and on the ground, he'd go, boom. And I was like, I was just watching her over and over and over to watch her where her feet were positioned and how she moved her body. And it was very light touch. And I was just like amazed. But she was a master. She had practiced this over and over and over and over and over. And it didn't matter what, they come from the left, they come from the right, they come from the forward, the behind, or whatever. She was able to handle them. And I think that's what we all want to, if we're going to do phone sales or any type of selling, that's what we should be aspiring to be. Not necessarily, an Aikido master, but a master on the phone. And if you look at Aikido, it's pretty much people's energy coming in and then you're reflecting the energy back to them. And and not hurting them when they're not trying to hurt you, and
Yeah.
and in sales, not hurting them when they're trying to hurt you either, right? So that's kind of the game. And really, Chris, I don't know. I view it kind of as a bit of a competitive game, if you will.
Sure.
And the outcome of the game is, okay, we're done today. We put the board pieces, and tomorrow we'll come in and we'll play again, right? And we'll
That's
put the
right.
monopoly money around and see who's going to buy Park Place and Boardwalk and all that stuff. Um, and I don't really think there's more that one can do other than say, okay, I'm going to study the game of Monopoly on my off time, right?
That's
Um,
right.
is do I, from your perspective as a CEO of a well-established company, do you see that as the process?
I do. We talk internally all the time about how do we get 1% better today?
Mm.
How do we get 1% better today? Because the compounding effect of that over time is powerful. And I think you have to have the mindset of a learner, of somebody who's striving to get 1% better every day, because you will, if you're listening to all the signals in the universe, reading and all that, you will be receptive and find ways to get 1% better every single day. And I think over time that does compound and it translates into that confidence. It translates into that ability to, have more success when you're trying to sell what it is that you're selling. And so we really emphasize 1% better every single day.
All right, I got to give Alan Weiss credit to this because I heard it from him the first time. He said
Yep.
to me, Doug, when you get 1% better a day and you do the math, in 70 days, you're twice as good.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm a math metrics type guy when it comes to like improving sales for people. So I'm like,
Yep.
what happens if we go out a year and we do that? You know, it's 36, 37x, right?
That's right.
So even if you aspire folks to be 1% better a day and take Chris's advice, and we're speaking with Chris Sorensen, he's the CEO of a company called PhoneBurner. If you take his advice, even if you didn't get the 1%, but you got, you know, 0.5%,
That's right.
right? In a year, you're going to be 18 times better than you are right now.
That's right.
And whatever you're trying to learn, whatever you're trying to aspire to. And, but Chris, I think there's one thing that people must know. It's like
Sure.
that requires daily discipline to be able to do that, to get 1% better every single day, right? I mean, it's kind of like we're a baseball, football, like,
Yeah.
they're still practicing in between the games,
Still practice. A lot of reps. That's right. A
you
lot
know,
of time preparing.
but people don't do this, right? They get a little bit better and then they go, oh, good's good enough.
They get complacent.
Yeah. Why do you think?
It's human nature. I think that we are kind of oriented to be a little bit, and I don't mean this as an insulting term, but we're lazy. And you have just a little taste of success, and you think that that's good enough. The guy that I have a lot of respect for, he was the track coach at Washington State, a guy by the name of Rick Sloan. And he used to always say, don't take good enough as good enough, and it kind of instills in you this hunger to every single day try to find one thing to make you better. But the absolute superpower is when you have a system designed to help you get better 1% every single day. And that system, I think, is relatively simple. And what I mean by that is, if you try to get 1% better across the board on 50 different things, you're going to fail miserably. But if you can focus over certain chapters in your life at getting 1% better in certain areas on a daily basis, that's where the magic starts to really compound. And I'll give you just a quick little anecdote from my own life. Um, I knew early on in my sales career that negotiation was going to be a huge component of being a successful salesperson, and that if you could approach negotiation as you do a friendly conversation, you were probably going to create a better experience for 99% of the buying public than not. And I remember taking an entire year of my life, it was back in 2016, 2015, where I was like, I want to be the best negotiator I can possibly be. And every single day in 2015, I'm going to take a step to become a better negotiator, and just broke it down. So, one example of how do you get better 1% every single day is, okay, well, what's one component of negotiation that you need to be really good at? Listening to somebody else's offer. So go out there, study as much as I possibly can about the offer that's been presented, so that I could not only hear what the person was saying, but I could ask really good follow-up questions so that I could get ultimately to a place where I understood where their interest was coming from. And taking an entire year to try to break down that negotiation process to get just a little bit better, learn from the best in the world at every step along the way, pay dividends.
Mm.
And I think for your audience that's out there, is when you have a mentor, you have somebody like Doug in your life, or you've got a manager that you really respect, or somebody else out there, asking them for honest, candid feedback. Where can I get better? And then building a system around where they've identified that there may be an opportunity for you to improve, and then putting a system in play to say, okay, these are the steps I'm going to take to get a little bit better. You bring up the example in the gym. Okay, well, I'm going to do a little bit better on my form today, or I'm going to pay more attention to nutrition or recovery. Just little small incremental steps to get bigger. I think where we find problems is when people want these massive leaps and bounds, and it just doesn't work that way. You have to take smaller steps and recognize the compounding benefit of getting just a little bit better every single day.
and it's healthier to do it that way, Chris.
Oh yeah.
Right? It's
Yeah.
and this is, why a lot of people like they run to their goal and then the goal kind of pushes back and they're like, well, this is too much. It's because we're taking on too much. And it's funny, you and I were talking, I had some health issues, challenges, right? And in the middle of that, I'm like, well, I'm going to get my oxygen up. So I'm going to go to the gym. And so I get on the treadmill and I'm like, and this doesn't sound like much, but when you're in a state, folks, that where I was health wise, where walking was becoming a problem, right? I'm like, I'll power through this. I get on the treadmill and I walk for 30 minutes and I'm turning the intensity up and 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 up. And I'm like, just to a place where I barely can keep up with, not falling off the treadmill. And at the end of 30 minutes, I stopped that thing and I swear the room was spinning. And I was like, uh-oh, I'm going out. Right. I said to my wife, I said, you might have to call the ambulance. Right. And she's like, are you all right? Like, and my color's turning. It's because I took on too much. Now, those of you who are like healthier, at that, and I wasn't at that time. I am now. 30 minutes wouldn't do that. But when you're starting a goal out, you've got to kind of pace yourself. And and here's the thing, when you hear mentors tell you this, you really want to listen to this, because I remember while I was on that treadmill, Chris, I remember Arnold Schwarzenegger had I think it was a pacemaker or a heart, something to do with the heart.
Yeah.
He had an operation, and he talked about how he had to. Now we're talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger, folks, the Terminator. The guy that's on. And he had to start out all over again and start and just work a little bit and then a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. So if you take a guy like Arnold Schwarzenegger in the health field, which, we all know he's done a lot, when he got knocked down from an operation, he had to start all over again and get 1% better a day and so on and so on and so on. And I should have heeded his advice right at that moment. And I'm using a personal story because it's kind of funny when I look back on it. But the reality is that your advice to people about just getting 1% better a day, anyone can get 1% better a day at something. And my advice is don't pick 19 things to get 1% better at. No. Pick 1, 2, 3 tops,
it's a disaster.
Yeah, because there's not enough time in the day, but to between everything else we're doing, right? But if you stay consistent over time, like even going back to the gym, now I've been back to the gym for a little bit. Now I can do the 30 minutes. Now I can do more than 30 minutes, right? And so it's kind of like you just got to kind of, I knew a CEO of a company called Melaleuca, Frank Vandersloot, and I watched it. He was like 40 pounds. I don't know, Frank, you were overweight. You admitted it. And he started walking one telephone pole to another telephone pole.
Yeah.
Then eventually he started down the line. He was running races and then he was going for a marathon and things like that. But he said, the first time he went from one telephone pole to the second telephone pole, he was winded.
Yeah.
And and so the reason I'm bringing this up is because in selling, like, we're talking about, in growing in some type of discipline like sales, you're going to feel once in a while, folks, like, oh, I mean, one of my independent, not mine, but company's independent agents of one of the companies we had today called up and she said, hey, listen, I did this, I used this, it worked good. And then I got to this next place and the lady hung up on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, okay, did you ask this question prior to? And she said, oh no, that was in the script material, wasn't it? I said, yes. And she said, no, I didn't. And I said, well, that's the reason you got hung up on, because you didn't qualify this question and you kind of launched into something that was a little personal for her. And so, we are going to stumble no matter what, and we learn and we move on. Chris, do you view this? I view this as kind of, again, like, the game, right? It's like, it's a game. And what I realize is I'm not, the universe isn't working around me. I'm part of the universe. And, and once I started realizing like, okay, that's kind of how this works, then if you have a bad day, okay, it's like whatever the rain came through in the clouds, came through the sky, right? But the sky's not like, oh my goodness, I can't take it anymore. No more clouds, right? Just lets it go through. The sun comes through, it's doing the same thing. It's like it just does what it does. I find in sales, if we look at it that way and we just say, okay, we're going to have a ratio of really great days, a ratio
Yeah,
of kind of and a ratio of like, oh my goodness, I wish I never got up this morning. Um, I think that makes it easier for people to understand that that's normal.
that's right.
What what
Yeah.
what what are your feelings on that?
I totally agree. And I think that the practical advice for everybody listening here is don't let the highs be too high, don't let the lows be too low. Focus more on what you can control in your process and continually improving your process because you're right. Those rain clouds are going to come in and the sun's going to shine as well. And if you let either one of those determine or dictate how you opt or take on the next opportunity, again, you want to learn from those things, but I think it's the consistency, the day in, day out, understanding that I'm ready with an umbrella in one hand if I need it, or my, swim trunks in the other if I need those. Don't let the highs get too high. Don't let the lows get too low. Continual effort, continual pursuit of getting just a little bit better every single day. And I think, what we try to do is the law of averages. We're trying to ultimately just kind of continue to get just a little bit better, a little bit more, retire a little bit more quota, talk to a few more people, advance a few more opportunities, but, not becoming too emotional or attached to any one particular outcome, but embracing more that, what this is all about at the end of the day is a system and how good is our system and where can we improve it?
I just heard you say the definition of humility, really, when it comes down to it. Not letting the highs get too high, not letting the lows get too low,
Yeah.
constantly trying to improve every single day, 1%, understanding that we're important, but there are other things in the world that are important too. Um, I believe that's spot on, and people, if they approach their life that way and just kept daily doing that every single day, it's amazing where people end up when they do things like this. In a short period of time, really 6 months. Like,
Oh yeah.
people are coming up to their friends are coming up to them and they're going, "Did you lose weight? Like, what's something's different about you?" Right, that type of thing.
That's right.
Um, Chris, I really appreciate you being on here and sharing this information. If you wouldn't mind, I want to pick your brain just maybe 2-3 minutes on compliance and using the phone today,
Sure.
because so many people are confused um, about what compliance is even today, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just so. What should people be looking at, or what should they not be looking at? What should they be like? Hey, I got to pay attention to this, and this really isn't a big deal. This part, really, that type of
Yeah,
thing.
sure. Yeah, compliance is a bit of a blender at the moment, and it's a bit of a blender for a couple of reasons. One is you've got all the federal regulatory bodies like the FCC that is out there that has all of the rules that they make, that kind of govern us from a national level. What particularly complicates it is individual states have now made some pretty dramatic changes to their laws in terms of what you can and cannot do in those jurisdictions. So, for example, what may be entirely legal to do in Texas is illegal in Oklahoma or California versus Oregon, for example. And so, how does a salesperson determine or a sales leader determine, what is the right thing to do? My advice is partnering with somebody who understands the law and understands those regulations so that you don't have to be an expert. And it's easier said than done because we're living in a world now where we grotesquely, I think, praise and reward people that just go out there and just, go all out. How can I get 50 calls going out at the same time? This is all about volume. I got to figure that a few more are going to connect. Where you really start to expose yourself to a tremendous amount of risk if you don't partner with somebody who says, okay, let's slow down a minute. Let's really try to understand what you're doing here and let's make sure that we don't have the state patrol in your rearview mirror here rolling their lights at any given moment. And so I think the most important thing that you can do as a salesperson is try to partner with somebody who wants to do calling and compliance the right way, and they pay it more than lip service. You see it in terms of how they describe their product, how they intend their product to be used, uh, to help give you some of the confidence that, maybe, am I doing this the right way? It goes from a maybe to more like, I know I'm doing this the right way.
Mm.
But you're right. It's a complicated and ever evolving ecosystem out there. These rules are changing constantly, and to try to go about it and do it your own, it's a recipe for disaster. I think that you've really got to do a good job of identifying the right partner to work alongside you to help you navigate it, because you're probably not going to get it 100% right, but you're trying to get it mostly right.
Yeah, and folks, think about it this way, the probability of you getting in trouble with it, it's not high, I would say,
Yeah.
unless you're doing something insane,
Yeah.
that people just look and go, why would you do that? Right. But it does happen. And you do want to be aware of this. I actually was just talking to a company the other day, and they're in the insurance business. And one of their independent agents just got fined pretty stiffly, for violating phone compliance. And so it's one of those things that you want to make sure that you're not doing it, folks. And I would recommend, Chris, can they reach out to your company to
Yeah,
talk about that?
absolutely. Yeah, in fact, if you want to go to our website, we have a whole entire section called Responsible Communications, which is designed to help be a series of resources for people to look at what needs to happen to do calling the right way to reduce the likelihood that you do get pulled over for violating. And this is going to sound, Doug, I think probably a little simple, maybe silly, but it's really the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do to you. And I think that if you're doing things that would even conceivably violate the golden rule, we're given these instincts to know whether we're on the right track or the wrong track. And if you're doing something that you wouldn't want to have happen to you, then don't maybe do it to somebody else. What do I mean by that? Don't call me 15 times in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Do you want someone calling you 15 times in 2 hours? No. But I see people doing that all the time. And guess what happens? One, they probably get a nice little love tap from a regulator, or two, they get thrown off the platform, or three, every single call they place gets either blocked or marked as spam because they're not following the golden rule. They're not treating others the way they want to be treated.
Chris, how do people get a hold of you or get a hold of the company? What's the contact pathway, if you will?
Yeah, sure. If you want to get a hold of me, it's Chris at PhoneBurner, CHRIS at PhoneBurner.com. And you can visit PhoneBurner.com to learn more about our dialing platform. And also on that website, for those of you that are out there that are struggling because your phone calls have been blocked or marked as spam too often, you can see some resources that we've put out there to kind of help navigate and guide you as you try to get that spam label removed from your phone calls. We've spent a ton of time, effort, and resources to really helping salespeople not have to deal with their calls being marked as spam, because that's a huge issue for salespeople, a huge issue. And even if you don't use our dialing software, we've made resources available for people to help remove the likelihood of their calls being marked as spam, because good legitimate phone calls, good legitimate salespeople trying to reach out and grow their business or respond to people who are showing some interest simply are having a harder time than ever getting through. And so it's been really important for us to be able to help those individuals.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up, because the spam thing, when your phone comes through, folks, and it goes spam likely, you're going to voicemail.
Yeah. Or being
right?
blocked.
Yeah, or blocked,
ignored.
right? It's and so we all know, if we're going to make calls, we want to talk to people, and the point of making a phone call is to actually get to talk to someone.
That's right. That's right.
And then when you get to the phone call and they pick up, the point of that phone call then is to get to the next step, not necessarily make the sale, whatever
right.
the next step is.
Yeah.
And I see that as another big challenge that people do in phone dialing all the time. They're trying to,
they do.
Yeah. So it's, Chris, thank you so much for being on here. I really appreciate it. You all the information. as well as the integrity and just you as a person. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
Well, Doug, I appreciate it. Appreciate having the opportunity to come on. It's been great sharing with your audience, and thank you for being so good at what you do.
Oh, well, thanks for the compliment. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. Hope you learned a lot here. I know I did. I actually have a page and a half of notes that is pretty densely packed here. So, let's go over a few things. Firstly, if you're not using the phone today, you really should be using the phone. And if you're dialing a lot of phone numbers, you can use technology to help you do that. It compresses your time because, if you compress your time, you talk to more people, your messaging's in alignment, you're doing your metrics, you're doing everything we always talk about, then you're going to sell more. And you sell more, you make more money, you usually have money to handle issues that you come across, at least in style, right? So that's a wonderful thing. We got to train our brain, as Chris and I were talking about doing so, because, instead of thinking, oh, that was rejection, hey, like he said, win or learn, right? I love that as well. So, and we got to program ourselves for confidence because we're going to have good days, bad days, up days, down days, and amazing days. And all of that, and you don't want to be riding like the sugar high up and then crashing down, right? Because it just beats up on our psyche. And so use the phones for sure. And make sure that you're diving deep and getting 1% better every single day on the topics of choice. And again, don't do too many topics of choice. It's, by the way, this is super hard. I've done this. If you take and you say, I'm only going to accomplish 3 goals, this quarter, or 3 goals this half a year, or even 3 goals this year, it's super hard to stay focused on those 3. And the reason behind that is because our brains are going, what about this? What about that? What about this? But if you can identify just those 3 things that are going to just move the needle for you in the positive direction, and you can stay focused on that, and you keep focusing on 1% a day, 1% a day. Again, 36, 37x at the end of the year. So that's super important to do. Compliance also, make sure you're staying in compliance. Doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen, I would say, even often. But when it does happen and you're out of compliance, those are just not happy days, right? There are people out there in government organizations that are just looking for those opportunities to, make their mark so they can get promoted. That's how I look at it anyways. It's just not fun. So, play by the rules and you can certainly win. All right. If you haven't already, I want you to write this down. Go out and sell something to somebody today, but do it for the right reasons. Play win, win, win. They win, you win, someone else wins. And speaking of winning, if you're looking for help in your business, you can certainly reach out to me if you'd like me to be the person to help you. Just reach out to me at Doug@ceosalesstrategies.com, ceosalesstrategies.com, plural on sales strategies. And let me know what you're looking for, and let's have a conversation and we'll figure it out. All right. Until next time, this is Doug C. Brown. To your success.